Good afternoon. When estate planning goes wrong, how can it go wrong? What do you mean estate planning gone wrong? What's the worst that could happen? Well, these are some of the questions that we're going to kind of get into today and talk about in our subject of when estate planning goes wrong. We're going to talk about three different scenarios, three different situations that can happen that can cause either your whole estate plan to be thrown off or that can cause consequences that you do not want to happen to you or to your family members. Okay, when it comes to the issues of estate planning, and particularly what can happen if you don't take control, if you don't take that action to plan the estate properly. And so a lot of people, one of the biggest reasons they don't start is because there's this kind of fear that, oh, well, if I do, that means that I'm going to be dying soon, right? Or um, it's just this morbid thought. That's not what it is at all. For me, it's very exciting because we get to construct this big grand plan of your life. Okay, what you want to have in it, who you want to benefit from it, how you're gonna leave behind all the things that you're able to accomplish and to contribute, even when you're not even here anymore. Okay, it's not just, oh, I'm gonna die, like all these drag kind of feelings. That's not what it is at all for me. That's not how I talk about it. That's not how I present to it, and that's not how I teach it to my clients. Okay, and they come to me because they know that I can help them put these plans into place and they're not going anywhere soon, right? So we're going to talk about three things that will just, when it all goes wrong, and one of them actually is waiting until you think you need it and it's too late. Okay, so like I mentioned, my clients come to me because they know I can help them, and they are alive and well. They're strong and healthy. They have plans for the future. They're still accumulating property. They have children they want to benefit from, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, right? They're thinking down the line, but they're not thinking, oh my gosh, tomorrow is the day. And so let me get this together really quickly, right? But that's what a lot of people think. And I've had that happen in the past. Okay. So one of the biggest mistakes you can make for estate planning to go wrong is to wait until you think you need it. And it's too late. When do you think you need it? Deathbed, hospice, final moments in the hospitals. These are places I have seen in practice. I've visited them, I've received calls from family members in order for a terminally ill loved one or a dying individual to finalize their last wishes before they go. I've been at bedsides with dying people. There's no way around that. I have, all right, because nothing was done prior to that. And I have a lot of compassion. I've offered pro bono to come up there in the past because I'm not worried about it back then. I'm not worried about trying to collect a little fee when somebody is like literally in my face crying because their mother is dying. That's just real talk. Okay. But I am here to warn you that this is the worst place to try to plan your estate. The worst place, the worst time, if it can even be done. I have been at hospital bedsides, people dying who are sick. They're still wanting this legal guidance, but it can't even get done. It cannot get done, right? Even if I had to come back the next day or the next week, it only got worse, right? It can't be done. All right, for a couple of reasons. First of all, from a legal standpoint, they're not in the right state of mind. They don't have sufficient mental capacity to leave a will. In the legal world, we call that testamentary capacity. All right, it's a legal term. That's what we call it here in Michigan. Other states may have a different terminology for it, but it's pretty much the same concept. You need to be in your right mind to be able to plan your final affairs. Okay. So when you're, in the hospital, you're literally fighting for your life. Your mind, you may be slipping in and out of consciousness. That's not the time. You don't have the capacity to do it. And if you even try to, it's more likely to be challenged from a legal standpoint if someone disagrees with them. Okay. So let's say there's three siblings, two of them at the bedside, one of them is never there. And, mom or whoever it is slipping in and out of consciousness. And then, let's say that person leaves out the sibling that's not there. Well, the sibling that's not there can say, mom wasn't even conscious when she wrote that. She wasn't even aware when she signed it. It can't be any good, right? And it can be grounds for challenging the validity of the will or whatever the document is. So that's number one, right? Just from a legal standpoint, it's very easy to get challenged when somebody is not sufficiently in the right mind to do so because they're literally losing, right, the last mind power that they have left. But more importantly, from a humanistic standpoint, okay, it's unlikely to get done because you just don't have the strength, from the capacity from start to finish. Forget the legality of it all. Just from an emotional standpoint, and I can't be. I've been in the place of someone who has counseled, right, clients who are looking at a loved one die. I've also been in the place of someone who has had to see a parent go through this. All right, be at the bedside while they're losing it. So I can't talk about the perspective of the person in the bed, but I can talk about the perspective of the loved ones around, and try to give the perspective of what that person dying may be thinking. Okay. So I just go back to a personal story. When my father was passing away, he was very sick. He was bedridden for a month before we finally had to call the ambulance, right? And it was hard enough for me to look at him like that, because he was a big, strong man, booming voice, right? Very kind of not overweight, but very solid stock. And I saw him slowly just whittling away, right, day by day. But as hard as that was for me, the worst pain of it all was how he had to be experiencing that, knowing that his suffering was causing his loved one's grief, right? So there's this very, very sensitive emotional pool of someone passing away right in front of your eyes. Okay, you seeing that and how it feels, and then them knowing that this is causing you grief. It's just a two-way street of pain, okay? This is not the place where you want to be talking about who's going to get the house, who's going to take care of the kids, who's going to get the car, where do the bank accounts go. Nobody cares. Honestly, in that moment, anybody with a heart does not care. Does it have to get taken care of? Of course. Is it important? Absolutely. But is that top of mind when you're literally seeing life passing in front of your eyes? No, it's not. Okay. So there's just so much else running through your mind. You want to cherish those final moments. You want to compose yourself as much as possible. For me, I was pregnant at the time my father was passing away, so I could not. I learned at that time that, we know that what the mother eats physically will affect the health of the child that she's carrying, but I didn't know until I had to go through it myself that the emotions that the mother carries can also transfer to the life of the child. So I had to keep myself so emotionally stable in the midst of all that I just, couldn't I couldn't get wrapped up in it so much that it would affect the life of my child. All right. And so when all that is going on, you're not worried about the house, the car, the this, the that. That's not the place for it. It's the worst place to try to plan. It's the worst place to try to start. And it's the worst place to try to finish, because, again, it might not even be possible. It's too late. It's too emotional. It's too sensitive. It's too unreliable, because, again, you might be in and out of consciousness. You don't want that to happen. All right. And again, that is not what estate planning is for. It's not to wait until you're literally dying to try to get this together. And I'm not blaming anybody. Like I said, I saw some of this stuff in my own family. Okay. Before I was licensed to practice, I had graduated by then, but I had to put a pause on life for a little bit. Okay. Because this was happening all at the same time. So there's no shade, there's no guilt, but it is a warning. Don't try to start it there. All right. And don't think that death is, or pre-death, right, is the prerequisite to starting an estate plan. It is not. Neither is old age. Okay. I think in a video before we talked about the actual legal requirements. You have to be 18 years old at least and of a sound mind, again. All right. Bare minimum. But that, being older, being sick is not the place you want to start. And that doesn't mean that you're going to get old and sick and die because you started. That doesn't mean that either. It's all about preparation. All right. You're not planning to prepare to die. You're simply planning so that when it happens, because it will to every single person on earth, right? At the moment, nothing else will need to be prepared because you've already planned ahead. All right. You've already covered that. The plan is already in place. It can be used smoothly. You can actually cherish and relish those last moments with your loved ones, right? You can literally rest in peace. All right, because that's taken care of. There is no worry about who's going to get the house, who's going to get the keys to the car, who's going to get the money. There's no fighting over that. That can still happen. Of course, people are people. But for your standpoint, you're not worried about that because you know what you left in place. Maybe at that point, hopefully as well, you've discussed it with everybody. So there's a very clear understanding of what's going on. Okay. But the point is, waiting, to the last minute is not a good idea because it may not even get done. And then so much chaos can just come out of that and flow out of that. So that's not what you want to do. That's mistake number one. All right. When it goes wrong, waiting at the very last minute where loved ones are around, they can't help you, and you know, it's just too late at that moment. Don't wait until it's too late. Okay? All right. So with that said, what's number 2 when estate planning goes wrong? Number 2 is having one and done plans. And we have also talked about this in a previous video. That once again, almost nothing in life is one and done. Okay, you don't learn how to ride a bike one time and then that's it. You never do it again. Or you learn how to drive a car one time, you never do it again. You eat one time, you never do it again. Come on, right? Same thing with an estate plan. Same thing with any kind of legal plans that we have. All right. So even if you have one right now, if you have a will, if you have a trust in place, if you do have powers of attorney, if you have any other kind of advanced plans or insurance policies, anything like that, how current is it? When did you get it done? Does it reflect what you want in your life as of this moment? Or is it still looking like what your life was looking like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Okay. Once again, estate plan, like almost everything in life, change. They have to change. They're not one and done tools. You must review and adjust with your life as you review and adjust in your life. All right. And I gave an example of some very significant life milestones and life moments of when you really want to make sure that you're reviewing and you're adjusting things such as marriage, birth, death, adoption, stepchildren, all of that, all these big important pieces, not just the property, but the people especially, okay? When you have new people coming in and out of your life, yes, new property also, but especially new people coming in and out of your life, you definitely want to make sure that you are ahead of the game and you account for them as soon as possible. Even if you had something done 2 months ago, if the plan had changed, or 2 weeks ago, if it's changed that much significantly, keep up with the plan, keep up with the life. Okay, let the life keep up. Let your plan keep up with your life. All right. Don't let your plan kind of die with your past life. Don't do that. All right. And then the last one when it comes to when estate planning goes wrong is leaving decisions to the probate court. And by that, I mean just not planning anything. Because if it's not by your design, it's by the court or the government's default. And those don't always match up. They're not always the same plan. They're not always aligned. All right. So one of the most heartbreaking things I see when I'm in court, when I'm in probate court, let me back up a little bit. Probate court is a specialized court in the court system that deals with, to make it easy, death and disability. So if someone dies, the probate court can hear who's going to get what with the property, all right, and how it's going to be distributed. Disability, when it comes to someone who's no longer able to care for themselves, either physically or mentally or developmentally, even children, all that stuff, probate court has the power to hear it, all right? So that's exactly kind of exclusively what they do. Whereas, criminal is the government is bringing charges against you. Civil, somebody suing somebody else for some money or an injury, something like that. Okay. So kind of back to my original thought, one of the most heartbreaking things I see when I'm in the probate court are individuals who no longer have control of their situations. All right. And they're subject to the rules of the probate court. They're subject to the ruling of the judge. It can be so damaging on the inside when I see this, okay? When somebody just can't care for themselves physically, they've lost their mentality. A lot of times what will happen is other individuals will get involved. There will be some family there, but also, the court will appoint mandatory attorneys called guardian ad litems. Mandatory, and then you have to pay them too, okay? To oversee kind of what's going on, to get a feel for the situation from family, from the individual themselves. There can be court-appointed physicians, court-appointed psychiatrists. And for me, having have dealt with some of these cases, but also especially looking at some of the worst ones, while I'm waiting for my case to get called, I'm in court, other cases are presenting themselves. It's just very almost depressing to the human spirit, because you can see right there somebody's power being taken away from them. All right. Whether it's appropriate or not, whether it's necessary or not, it doesn't matter. Just the fact that this is kind of the process. Okay. We as people, as individuals, we have so much more power than we realize, but we often default to the power of the court system. We think of the court system, the governments, as the higher powers or the powers that be, as if they are all power, and they're not. They are not. Do they have that authority? Of course they do, but you're not powerless, is the entire point. All right. And the problem with kind of just leaving your affairs to the court system is the court system will never care about you or have the control over you that you do. All right. They're there to do their job. They're not there to always see the best outcome go through. Now, of course, they're not looking for the worst. And in some cases, depending on what it is, right, they have their own best interest rules, but that is not going to align with your plan. It's not going to align with your plan, with what you want, your creative control, your capacity. It's not going to mesh. So that's why it's so important for you to take it into control, for you to take it into account. All right. And estate planning can help you prevent your affairs from spilling over into the court system. Number one, by kind of, depending on what you do, by taking the power into your own hands, getting your own estate plan together, you can keep it private. Okay. All court matters are public. They're a matter of public record, who the attorneys are, who the parties are. The transcripts are the words of exactly what was said at every court hearing. Every court hearing has one. All right. So, all the documents filed, whatever property you possess and own, if it needs to go there, it's going to be there. If you want to keep that private, do estate planning outside of court. All right. Talk to an estate planning attorney, whether it's myself, someone in your state, whomever else, we can get you together with that if that's one of your goals. Okay. So that's number one, just keeping it private. But also, just keeping the control within, again, yourself. All right. So I'm going to talk about two different estate planning situations of how using these tools can really help you. All right. So one is the power of attorney. I've talked about this also in a few other videos, but I want to talk about it as much as possible because it is very good. It's a very good tool to keep a lot of your personal affairs out of court. All right. So a power of attorney is a document that you can utilize to name somebody as an agent for you. That means they're able to act for you, either in your business affairs or in your medical affairs. So we have a power of attorney for finances, a power of attorney for healthcare. You also may hear of a term called durable power of attorney. That's the financial one. You also might hear of like a patient advocate. A lot of hospitals might have that, and that's mostly healthcare power of attorney. All right. But the point is, one can help you with your business, your finances. One can help you with your medical decisions. All right. Both of them are extremely useful. I always advocate to have both. All right. And to let them be effective as soon as possible. So if need be, it can be used right away. All right. And it has its own provisions to avoid abuse and everything. But the real power of it is it can prevent long drawn out court process that I talked about that, might have to have mandatory court appointed attorneys, mandatory physicians, mandatory psychiatrists. All right. One is called a guardianship process. That's naming someone a guardian over your personal well-being and taking care of your medical affairs. The other one is called a conservatorship, naming someone to look over your bank account and your business affairs. All right. Your financial affairs. And that can be so tedious, so time consuming, so invasive because you have to go in your business and it's all supervised by the court. All right. And this is not what you want because it's once it's in there, it has to come out that same way oftentimes. And it can be very hard to terminate. It could take a very long time. Who knows when you'll really have the capacity to, be able to get out of that. A lot of hassle, a lot of stress, a lot of lost power. You don't want to do that. So if you can do a power of attorney, I highly, highly, highly recommend that because it could do the exact same thing without all the court supervision, without all the publicity of a court affair. Okay, without all the other parties, all the other attorneys being involved, just you and your own personal attorney. All right. And then also so that's just while you're still alive, right? And dealing with your own affairs. And in terms of property that you own and you can pass on after your death, without a proper plan in place, the court will determine that for you by law as well. Okay. And then again, it might be okay. It might fall in line exactly what you want, but it's not guaranteed to. All right. And I'm going to give you an example, a real life court example. This was not my case, but again, being in court and waiting for your case to be called, you hear other cases. This is one that I heard. all right, in the probate court, maybe a year or so ago. So still fairly recently. There was a father who passed away in part due to something he ingested from a company. Maybe he died from an illness, and this company their product was a contributing cause. All right. So his wife, his widow, took over the estate, and the company, there was some kind of civil suit there, right? So they sued for his death and his illness. Company was found liable and paid money to his estate. I forgot what the judgment was. It was at least $50,000. Okay, so no small amount of money. All right. So the widow and the company, they agreed on the settlement, and they agreed to split the money. The company would pay it out to the estate, and it would go to the widow and her daughter. Her daughter was his stepdaughter, though, not his biological daughter. All right. So the company agreed to pay out to the money to widow and stepdaughter. However, again, they agreed to all this, but the judge blocked the agreement because by law, here in Michigan at least, by law, stepchildren cannot inherit from step-parents unless they're legally adopted. All right. This was not the case. So father never legally adopted stepdaughter, had raised her, married to her mother, all that stuff. But because she was his stepdaughter, she could not receive that money, even though the company agreed to pay it out to her. All right. Whereas the father had an estate plan that had explicitly and expressly named her as an heir. Stepdaughter, and it can even identify as a stepdaughter, but saying, this is my stepdaughter, I've taken care of her, I want her to have this, it would have been no problem. All right. So when it comes to thorny issues like that, and it doesn't have to be stepchildren, it can be a grandson that you raised and you loved, or a neighborhood kid that you loved and raised as your own. If they're not within a specific kind of blood range and you don't already have them in a will, you don't expressly name them, they're likely to get left out. Okay. And so, this is how it can impact you. This is how it can go wrong when it comes to estate planning, caring about the people you love, your family, your property, making sure they're taken care of when you're no longer able here to do it. All right. And so if you don't want that to happen in your family, please do consider where you may fall in line with this. And we do have more resources and tools. You can go to our YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe. We have many videos on this issue. And also in the link in this description, we have the 7 biggest disasters waiting to happen if you don't have your estate plan in place. We expound on some of these issues and at least 4 more. All right. But the point is, this is what can happen when it goes wrong. You don't want to make these same mistakes. All right. And so until then, we'll see you again next Thursday, June 27th, same time, 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. All right. Take care.